Welcome to the second webinar of this calendar year, and actually it's our 25th since we started the series back in September 2020. It's great to have you all here. These webinars are organised by the CAQDAS networking project, which is based in the Department of Sociology at the University of Surrey. I'm Christina Silva, I manage that project, and I'm joined by my colleague Sarah Bullock today here in hosting this webinar. And Sarah is waving at you, you won't be able to see her. She's going to be facilitating the discussion at the end. Our webinar today will be given by Dr. António Pedro Costa and Assistant Professor Catarina Brandão, who I'll introduce to you shortly. But before I do that, just to remind you about the next 3 webinars that we've got scheduled coming up over the next couple of months. On the 4th of March, we have a pedagogy webinar about an innovative tool to connect methods and software teaching. On the 30th of March, we have an awareness raising webinar about the history of our CAQDAS field. And on the 29th of April, a user webinar about harnessing one product, QDA Minor, for coding large sets of qualitative responses to survey questions. So we've got a varied set of topics there. And of course, you can also tap into our training courses too. Sarah and I teach a range of different methods and software tools. And you can see we've got workshops in several different software programs coming up. Do keep an eye on our website and our social media channels for information about other webinars and trainings that we schedule them. And of course, if you're interested in contributing to our webinar series, please do get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you with ideas of topics, or if you'd like to run one yourself, then we'd love to hear from you. All our webinars are recorded, so you will be sent a link to the recording of this one and the recordings of our previous webinars. You can see there the link on my slide, and Sarah has put it in the chat. We'll put it in the chat again later for you too. Okay, so let's get on to the business of the day, today's webinar, and I'm absolutely delighted to introduce formally to you Dr. António Pedro Costa and Assistant Professor Catarina Brandão, both of whom are based in Portugal and who are both involved in developing the web-based qualitative analysis tool WebQDA. António is one of several software researchers for WebQDA, and he's published widely on topics related to the use of software in qualitative data analysis. He's currently teaches curricular units on research methodologies, and he's the coordinator of 3 prominent conferences on qualitative research. The World Conference on Qualitative Research, which actually took place last week, and also the Ibero-American Congress on Qualitative Research, and the Qualitative for Business Conference, both of which are coming up soon. He's also been guest editor of several special issues on qualitative research, including a series of books on computer-supported qualitative research, which are published by Springer. Catarina Brandão is assistant professor at the University of Porto, where she is a researcher at the Centre for Psychology. She has coordinated integrated master's courses in psychology, and she founded the Organisational Psychology and Human Resources unit in her faculty. She collaborates with António in several ways, including her work with WebQDA, and also as a member of the organising committee for the 3 international qualitative conferences that I mentioned earlier. Catarina has published several papers and book chapters on leadership, human resource systems, organisational developments, as well as qualitative research, and she's currently an editor for the journal New Trends in Qualitative Research. So a warm welcome to both of you. We're very much looking forward to this presentation on visualization of qualitative data and learning more about what CAQDAS packages can provide in that regard. I think Catarina is going to start off. So over to you, Catarina.
So hello to everybody. Thank you so much for having us here, for being here. Christina, Sarah, thank you so much for this challenge and the opportunity to talk about visual outputs. This presentation was prepared by me and António Pedro. He's here with us and he will be joining us whenever he feels it's necessary, and also considering your questions. So Christina has made a great job at presenting us. So I will be moving and presenting our agenda. So we will be talking to you a bit about why use visual outputs, when we selected some examples that we bring here to present you and think about, and we chose these visual outputs because we believe they are useful at different stages of our research, and there are a lot of other tools, so please bear in mind that these are some examples. Some ideas we have here, like it's more like tips. We believe it's important to consider when using this type of tool, and we will also do some demonstration, and then of course space for your questions. Okay, so why visual outputs? I believe all of us here, we have a clear idea of the nature of our data that comes from different sources, and the truth is that if it's true that we think of presenting qualitative data in the form of text, and from some years, sorry, I'm missing the expression, but recently, or more and more recently, we see that researchers are finding that visual presentation are helpful to support their work, namely when writing research and results. So António Pedro, for instance, he's been very interested in the different possibilities of visual tools and how this can be incorporated into CAQDAS, because we see this trend that it's more than a trend. It's something that is useful and makes sense. So, in a nutshell, when using visual outputs, they support us in the identification of patterns in different stages of our research. They also support presenting descriptive data, because this is something that qualitative researchers also do. We need to tell our audience who are participants, our cases, our organizations, communities, who they are, their characteristics. And also they allow us to deal with a big amount of data. Usually this data is complex. You need to spend a lot of time, and you probably know this already, a lot of time with your data to make sense of this. And a way of transmitting this complexity is visual outputs. And when we think that we qualitative researchers often struggle with the ability to present big amounts of data in short spaces for journals, this is something that we definitely can use, visual outputs. So when visual outputs can be used at different stages of our research, and this is probably something that that brings a lot of doubts. Okay, so this visual output, when should I use it? And we can see that some visual outputs are more useful at the initial phase of your research, when you are doing a pre-analysis, when your data, you just got your data, you don't have a model to code. This means you are using a more inductive approach, and you want to know, okay, so what are they talking about? So there are some visual tools that are particularly helpful when you are at this stage, at the beginning of your research. Of course, they are very useful also to support your interpretation, and as I was mentioning, your reporting, presenting your research in a journal, and particularly at the section of results, using some visual outputs may support your presentation. Visual supports are also useful for making models and showing your reader how do you connect different ideas that you found, your different results. Sharing, of course, and discussing results. And this was what I was just focusing. So let's see what examples do we have, what do we have so far, and we can use. So what we did here is these are the visual outputs that we will be talking about, and we organized them into at what point of your data are you? At what point of your analysis are you? So when you have your data, but you don't have codes, these two outputs are particularly useful. You can use a word cloud and you can use a word tree. These are useful because they don't require you to have coding in your data. Of course, you can use both of these tools if you do have coded the data, but you don't need to. So, as I was saying, okay, so you just got interviews, you want to have some idea about what are they talking about, what are the concepts more present, and this may inform your code system. Both these tools are good choices. When you move to a second phase and you already have interpretative codes, this means that you have already your code system, whether it is an inductive code system or a deductive. You can use other visual tools. You can use a tree map, a Sunburst, Bubble Chart, and pie charts. And we will see, we will see how they look like. And in a different stage, when you have interpretative, but also descriptive codes, and these are the characteristics of your cases, like age, sex, occupation, etc. You can also make use of Barchart, double entry table that we call a matrix, conceptual maps, and mind maps. So please bear in mind that you can use a tree map if you have interpretative and descriptive codes. Our exercise here was, okay, so this visual output will be more interesting, relevant to the researcher, to allow him to explore the data in what stage. Okay. Of course, you don't need to use them all in your research, and both of these, they usually they don't are used in a paper. So this that we have here, this will make sense in presenting your results and supporting your discussion. Word cloud and word tree, will be relevant for your own work, for your own dwelling in the data, but we don't usually use them in a paper. Maybe in a presentation, because it has visual impact, and when you are communicating your work in a conference, in a seminar, it may be more relevant. In a paper, not so often. Okay, so here we have a word cloud. So a word cloud, what it will do is it will look at your data, the text that you have, and this can be in interviews, data that you collected in social media, whatever, and you will be able to see what are the most frequent words. So what the visual output tells you is, okay, this is the word that is most often used. So the tool gives more, gives a bigger size to words that are more frequent. And this will support your thinking of, so this data, my participants are talking about qualitative, of course, COVID-19 is the most used. Then education, this is education in Portuguese. They also talk about pandemic, qualitative, and this may support you starting the thinking on what is relevant for your participants. Once again, this is a support. So we do need, as qualitative researchers, and you are all aware of this, we need to go and see, okay, so COVID-19 is the most used word, but where is this word being used? So imagine that we would see it's only in the researchers' words, because we had a interviewer that liked to talk about a lot and said COVID-19 a lot. So this will not have meaning for our results. CAQDAS usually allow us to delete a word from a word cloud. So, okay, so COVID-19, this has no meaning for my real data, for my participants. What they said, my participants' words. So I would add it to a stop list and the word would disappear and education would come in a higher dimension. Okay. Here we have word tree. And what word tree, what it gives is, the logic is, okay, so I want to see how this particular word comes and appears on my participants' speech. When they talk about quality, it's just this word in Portuguese. When they talk about quality, what do they talk about? Quality is in what context? And the word tree gives you the context of a word or a phrase. So for me to choose this visual output, this is present in all visual outputs. I need to know, what am I looking for? Or what am I curious about? So you imagine, I just did a word cloud and quality emerge as the bigger word, or one of the biggest. And I would say, okay, so now I want to see in what context that word comes about. Is it quality, education? But the difference here is that you need to choose the word or expression. And then we can see, once again, in this exploration phase, we can see, okay, so when my participants talk about quality, what they talk about, they start talking about this, then they move to quality, and then they move to this word. So we can see the word or expression in context. And most KDAs that have this tool will allow you to click on the phrases and you can see specifically, okay, so when they talk about this, then this is associated with this particular ideas. Once again, this may give you support to think on your data, to think on support building your coding system, and it can also support you on identification of specific questions, specific queries that you want to do later on your work. Tree map. Now we are at the stage where we do need to have coding. So what tree map will give us, and this is also, I have used this in papers, but also in presentations, because I find this very useful to present your audience with the ideas that are present in your research and also their presence. So what do we have here? This is in a project where we wanted to see what were the different ideas that human resources managers had regarding the impact of COVID-19 on organizations. So here, the tree map allowed us to represent in a single image all the ideas that our participants focused. So when they talk about the impact of COVID-19 in organizations, they focused responses to the outbreak. So this is our first level category, or this is a major code. Then we have the outbreak impact, a second major code. So this means that if you think of a tree map, this code and this code are at the same level. Also HRM orientation and learnings and difficulties. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 codes at the same level, but they are not represented with the same size. So the tree map, what it does is it gives more space to codes that have bigger references, more references. And it tells us also the different subcodes that we have in each code. And it also organizes this information according to number of references. And usually CAQDAS allows you to, if you are moving the mouse, he will tell you how many references we have at a particular space. So this is interesting because here we also have the use of colors. And we see that a darker color indicates more coding references. Okay, so using this in a presentation, we can, in a very direct way, show our audience that this was something that our participants were exploring. And they were particularly focused on the different actions that they adopted. What did they do to respond to the outbreak? Of course, once again, you don't have here the finer ideas. This is something that does not delete the relevance of presenting the data, the text, considering that usually we use text, and so that you would need to support this with citations from your participants or from your data. But this is an interesting way to, in a very quick, direct way, to tell your audience, so this is what we found. Okay. Then, of course, we would show them exactly what does this mean, and this, of course. This is also interesting because it tells us the different, it can inform you of the different layers on your coding scheme. And CAQDAS also usually allow you to choose how many levels of your coding scheme do you want to have represented on a tree map? Because maybe having too much information, too much codes will not be as informative as presenting this and then moving forward with real citations. We have here the pie chart. The pie chart is, of course, very familiar, and it is also a tool that is available and that can be interesting to organize your data. So please remind that we are not in that phase of exploring the data without coding. We are exploring, but we now have been using, we already have been coding our data. And this is usually used to represent interpretative codes. So you have coded your data and you want to know how does your coding expresses itself, is represented in all the coding that you have done. So the pie chart will represent the entire pie chart will represent 100% of your coding. Of course, once again, this depends on what you choose, but let us think. In this particular example, what we have is we have documents. So this is an example where we looked at metadata, and what we have here is 1, 2, 3, 4 metadatas. And the size of each slice represents the number of presences of a particular word in each document. So in this document, this word was present 3 times, and 3 represents 90% of 100 presences, and 100 presence is the whole pie. So I want to see how a particular word is in different files, in different sources, in different participants. And this allows me to see, okay, so this word, it was particularly explored in this document. Okay, so why? This can give you also tips for other questions. I wonder if this document has specific characteristics. I wonder if this participant has some characteristics or some ideas that he also mentioned that may be associated with this word. So once again, we would look at the slices, each slice, and support our output with explanation of and citations. Now you are seeing Sunburst Chart. So this particular output it's from WebKDA, and what we have here is in the center you have a code that is named suggestion. So you have here your first level code, and then in the so inner and outer circle you have the subcodes, and these subcodes are presented here. So you have here the information regarding the code and the number of references, and considering that all of this is your coding, 100% of the coding in this theme. And here I'm using theme and code as the same thing, but it may not be. You have the 100% here divided in these different subcodes. Of course, it is much more easy to look here and to see the expression of these different subcodes. So I can see that in the topic suggestions, most part of the biggest expression is saying that I don't have a suggestion. But then you can see that, okay, so the second is regarding the program, and then regarding the sessions. So this tells you, okay, so most references, and you can also choose at some CAQDAS. I don't want the number of references, I want the number of cases. So imagine most participants, they focused on suggestions regarding the program and regarding the sessions. So you do have here descriptive data that informs how your participants' ideas are present in your data. Okay. Some CAQDAS also allow you to, as you are moving in the chart, you can have access to the content, and that is something that you would definitely do, because you want to see, okay, so what does program mean? What does, see, this has to do with a conference. So there we do have a reference regarding coffee break. Okay, so let's see what exactly did the participants, because it's one reference, said regarding coffee breaks. So this will never take you the need to look deeper and see the meaning and the context of your data. This will support you in doing that, and once again in presenting your data and making it more clear and also more appealing to a reader. Yeah, subcodes. So Dendrogram, I do like Dendrograms. What they do is they group data according to some criteria. So this is it uses cluster analysis logic, and I do have here an example from my own research that makes more sense to me. That's why I will use it. So what we have here is we clustered nodes by coding similarity. So what we wanted to see is how are our participants using nodes when they talk. And this Dendrogram and presenting a cluster analysis, it tells us that these nodes tend to be coded the same way. This means they tend to appear in the data in the same way. In this particular research, we wanted to see, okay, so when they talk, when participants talk, what ideas do they tend to connect? What ideas tend to be together? And we do see that in this research, we were focusing on a model, a psychology model that talks about the relation between people and the need for you when you are looking for, when you are in a need for care, you need support. It's important that you have someone available to give that support to you. And so you do see, so step behind. We are focusing on a model that has to do with a dynamic relationship. If you do need support, it's fundamental you have the support for your well-being. So it was very interesting to see that these two ideas, they tend to be together. looking for care, so you are in the need of care, is, in our participants' words, it's associated with receiving care and having someone to give you care. So what we saw here was that this model that we were working to present and to develop in our students, the model was being incorporated, because when they talked about their experience doing the tasks, they were it was clear for them the importance of this connection. So here we have, we can see how our nodes tend to be together. In our case, this supported a theory that we had, and we wanted to see if our data was reflecting the theory, but this can also reflect, this could go against our theory or give us different ideas. So I can tell you something like sexual system is something that participants usually don't explore a lot, and we can see that when this idea comes, they also talk about their internal ideas, in what way do their mind and representations support what you do and what you think, and also in what way does the external environment, what is around you, supports what you do. So you can see here how the context, internal and external, was associated with talking about sexuality. So once again, this was, in this case, this was not something that we anticipated. It makes sense, but this was a surprise, as this was something that supported what we anticipated. So once talking about a dendrogram and a cluster, we can see how words or nodes tend to appear together in the same document and in the same participant. And this can give you insights. Of course, once again, you do need to look at the data and see exactly what are they saying about caregiving, what are they saying about care seeking, because they can be saying that this relationship is important, or they can be saying that this relationship is not important, and this will make all the difference. So matrices. Matrices sometimes are not liked by qualitative researchers because they have numbers and some research, well, they may have numbers, and some qualitative researchers don't believe in the use of numbers in this type of analysis, and that is okay. I particularly tend to use them when I feel it makes sense, but not always. So when we use a matrix double entry table, what we are asking is what are the ideas for considering different, what are the reference presents in different codes. So in this first example, what we have here is the descriptive codes, and we have here nationalities. And in the columns, we have two interpretative codes, and we have strengths and weaknesses. And we this matrix, it tells us which nationality, or participants from which nationality focused on what? So I can see that Portuguese participants, they explored strengths and weaknesses in a similar way. And I can see that Brazilian participants, they didn't talk about strengths, they talked only about weaknesses. Okay, so, and we can also see that weaknesses were much more focused by all participants. Okay, of course, you do need to bear in mind the distribution of your participants, because we can have here much more Portuguese participants. We can see we only have a German participants. Some CAQDAS, they already, they normalized this distribution. So 25 will have, I'm missing the word, but 25 will not have the same, will be put in a scale where it makes sense to be compared with for Belgians, for the participants with Belgian nationality. So the idea here is that I already have interpretative codes. I have applied my coding system, and I've always also have represented my participants' characteristics. So I do have here nationality, but this could be, okay, I want to see men, women, and no gender or no associated gender. How do they express themselves regarding this idea? And the right side, we have the same example that I used to talk about Dendrogram. And here what we did in this research, we wanted to see along the time. So we have here 8 moments. The project was, it was a program that we implemented along a semester. And we had during the semester 8 moments where we gathered data. We don't have here all of them. We have moment 2, 3, then we skipped 4 because for this particular metrics, 4 had no meaning, 5, 6, 7, 8. So what we wanted to see was these ideas, these codes, how are they expressed along the program? So we have first level code, and then we have subcodes. And we wanted to see how our participants refer to these codes along the way. So this can tell us, for instance, the number will tell us in a very direct way that they particularly explored this topic, exploratory processes. And it's when we use matrices and any visual output, it's very important to inform our reader what do the words, what do the numbers mean. So we have here the N, and we have here M. So when we look at this, here we have this information. So the cells present the references in the category. N refers to participants that code the category along the program. So when we did this metrics, we asked the software to present in each cell participants that were referring to the coding, to that code. So we don't have here the number of references. We do have the number of, the N is the number of participants. Here we do have the references in the category. I need to read my own information. Okay, so this allowed us to see in a very organized way what were the codes being more explored, by how many participants, and then look deeper in the data. I do like one idea. Why do I think this makes sense? It makes sense to use this matrix, this project. We had 30 participants, so we believed that with this dimension of participants, it was interesting to see how were they expressing themselves regarding different ideas using a matrix. So I will take us to Barchart, because I do like to connect a matrix to a bar chart. And here we have a bar chart that was used considering the data that we obtained from a matrix. Okay, so this is from the same project. And what we did here was, okay, so I want to see, let me go back to the matrix. And please, when I talk about visual outputs, it's always present the question, right? What do I want to see? Okay. This sometimes is not very easy for a qualitative researcher, because sometimes, most part of times, the questions are emerging as we are looking in the data. So we do have here several moments, and what we did in the software, okay, I want to divide the moments and see, because we took moment 4, and at moment 4 something happened, and I want to see if this has something different from this. They talked about different things. So we did a similar matrix, and let's see, here we have the information regarding moment 1 and 3, and the information regarding moment 4 to 8. Okay? So once again, this gives you a very interesting open, direct way to see how people are expressing themselves in your data. So one visual output may be the input to a second output, and it was the case here. And some CAQDAS, they will allow you to having a matrix to go ahead and have and do a table like this. But you can also have, and I'm looking at the time, let me see if I can speed up a bit, I'm sorry. And I'm looking, we do have here a bar chart also, and this is a simpler one. So you can use a bar chart to express your descriptive codes, like how you imagine you want to show your audience the different nationalities, the different occupations in your group of participants. In your cases, this is also interesting to. You can also use Barchart to do this. Okay, so conceptual maps. Conceptual maps are very interesting to represent your model. So we have here an example that we got from the internet, where we have a very elaborated map, and what they do is, this type of tools that is also available at some CAQDAS, is we will put a concept connected with another concept. So when you connect concepts with when you connect concepts using a word or an expression, you will have a proposition. So looking at here, what we have is scholarship of teaching and learning includes self-reflection. So this may be used to as a discussion element. You have arrived at a point where your concepts and variables, they are connected this way, and you want to discuss it. This can also be included in a report as a way, a paper, as a way to organize in a short space lots of information and lots of complex information. Mind maps are very interesting. Also, they don't have the connection. So what we have here is, you have different ideas that are in different branches. And this is also a way to represent ideas, but you don't have the connection. So this is also relevant, but it will not be as informative as the conceptual map. But you may find that, okay, so using a conceptual map, it will take too much space. So I will break down my conceptual map in a mind map. So I move a step, I give a step forward, and I will try to synthesize more the information. Bubble chart. Bubble chart is something that we find may also be helpful, and some CAQDAS may implement it in the future, because it also allows you to see in a very visual way the expression, the presence of a specific code in your data. So here we have a research where we only have 3 nodes. And here we have a system with 3 nodes. So we have codes and subcodes. So why isn't it moving? I'm sorry.
Catarina, we are going to need to wrap up fairly shortly so that we have a chance for some questions. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, yeah, okay, sure.
Thank
Thank you, and sorry. I always think I will not speak so much, and then I do.
I know that problem. I have the same.
Yeah. Okay, so some tips. It's fundamental when you choose your visual outputs. Be very sure of your goal and your research goal. Of course, some visual outputs, we saw that they make sense in a phase where you have a research goal. Okay, so sorry, your goal, your research, and research questions. You know why you are doing your research, but you may be in a very open project. But even so, be aware of why are you doing the project. What is your fundamental goal? And if you have specific research questions, I do like to do that, dividing my research goal in specific in different research questions, and then making more specific questions, because this way I feel that I am being guided to the questions that I want to present my the software or my data, and this will help me to understand what visual data makes sense for me. Also, guarantee you know what you are using. So what does Wordcloud do? What does Barchart do? What does Dendrogram do? And most CAQDAS, they do have the help tool, so use it. It's there for you to use. So use it and see, does this make sense? Am I looking at something that is coherent, that has a meaning, or this is not helpful at all? So don't be shy, use help. I do it. Another idea, and this is something that I also do, I use several tools. Sometimes I use a CAQDAS that gives me so far, but I would like to have a different way of presenting the data. So I have used Matrix at NVivo, and then I have moved it to Excel because at that point in my research, I found that Excel would give me a better chart or a better representation. So don't limit yourself to a specific CAQDAS, because we have a lot of tools available out there. For instance, mind maps are also available, and other tools. And if we have the tools, we should use them when it's appropriate. And big fundamental idea, always refer to your visual outputs in the text. Don't think that because it's visual, because it's intuitive, it's enough to put it there. No, we need to put it, we need to refer it. This means, like, if you have table 1, your text needs to say, as mentioned, as we can see in table 1 or in chart 1, and then explain, support your reader, what is he looking at. Don't tell everything, because otherwise you won't need a visual output, or you may. But give your reader enough information for him to understand what he is looking at, and to support him in finding other things that maybe you didn't saw. Okay, so I will stop here. Thank you for bearing with me. Sorry if I went too long.
Not at all, Catarina. I want to thank you. Thank you so much for the very detailed presentation of such a wide range of visual tools. And it's going to be really useful, I believe, to many people who are starting out on their CAQDAS journey. So thank you. And great to see them in WebQDA too. What a pleasure, what a treat to have an opportunity to see that. Nice. So Christina and I have a couple of questions just in the last minute or two. We might send you a few more afterwards, but if you'll allow me to ask just one little question, which came to us, which is to do with the context in which we're using visual tools. So whether you have any thoughts about visualizations that are more or less appropriate for different qualitative methodologies, because many of the ones that we're seeing in CAQDAS-packages these days are producing some form of quantitative summary. And so do you have any reflections around the methodological context in which these may or may not be appropriate?
I think Pedro may talk about the use of some visualization tools and reviews, because he has been working a bit on that. I would say that when I choose the visual tool, it has to do with the stage where I am in my research, and I also keep in mind my participants. So I used the N to some visual outputs because I had a sample of 30 people. If I have a sample of a smaller sample, I will look more at the references. And I would say it has to do with that. It's something that also supports me in choosing. If I want to see if, for instance, two specific ideas that are expressed in the data, but that are very different, I would like to see a visual representation that allows me to see how these ideas go along the way. It's supported on data, it's supported on quantitative data, the number of references, but it's more the visual that makes me think about what is happening.
It's a prompt. Yeah, it's like a prompt to ask an additional question. Very interesting. Thank you. Thank you. Antonio, would you like to add anything before we bring it all to a close?
I think Catarina answers the question. When I have the number in the matrix, for example, in WebQDA, when I click in the number, I have the reference and the text. The number tell me, wow, it's important for humans, this opinion about interpretive codes. Okay, now I want to read what is behind these numbers. And the bridge of numbers and text is too easy. Numbers allows me to make decisions about what I need to read or put in my paper. It's not the inferential statistic, it's a descriptive statistic.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much for that.
We should not lose ourselves in the numbers, but they may give us insights.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both so much for a very stimulating presentation. We will certainly be referring people that we talk to the recording of that. So unfortunately, we've come to time. Thanks everyone who's attended. So lovely to have you all here. And we will send the recording through very shortly, and wishing you all a very lovely rest of your day, wherever you are in the world. Thanks so much again, Catarina and Antonio.
Thank you so much for having us. All the best for everybody. Take care.
Bye-bye now.